All right, today we're jumping into something that's, well, it's a real head scratcher in India's corporate world. You've got everyone saying, yes, digital learning is the future, it's absolutely essential, but then the money isn't following the talk. And that contradiction, we're calling it the budget paradox. So let's just get right to the heart of it, shall we? This is the big question we're looking at today. In a world that's changing faster than ever, you'd think upskilling your team would be a no-brainer. So why on earth are so many companies basically choosing to shortchange their own future? And this thing, it has a name. We're calling it the budget paradox. It's this bizarre situation, you know? In all the meetings, everyone's nodding along, saying how important digital learning is, but when the budget proposals actually hit the desk, suddenly the numbers just don't add up. So, how are we going to break this down? First, we'll look at the paradox itself. Then, we're going to dig into the three big problem areas: money, people, and systems. And don't worry, we'll finish up by looking at how we can actually move forward. All right, first up, the digital learning paradox. Let's really get a feel for the scale of this investment gap. Okay, just look at this comparison. It's pretty wild. On one side, you've got the Indian government putting a huge amount of money into education. We're talking over 1.28 lakh crore. But then you look at the corporate world, and it's a totally different story. Only about 58% of companies even bothered to increase their learning and development budgets. I mean, that's a massive disconnect, right? So where do we start looking for answers? Well, let's be honest, it usually comes down to one thing: the money. Let's unpack the financial barriers that are really holding these companies back. First off, you've got just the sheer sticker shock of it all. I mean, to build a really solid custom learning management system, that's kind of the digital hub for all your training, you could be looking at a bill of up to $200,000. For any company, but especially for smaller ones, that is a huge chunk of change to find up front.
Okay, but this is where it gets absolutely nuts. Companies are hesitant to spend all this money, right? But get this. Only 4% of them are actually measuring the return on investment for digital learning. 4%! Can you imagine walking into your CFO's office and saying, hey, I need a huge budget for this thing, but I can't really prove it'll make us any money?
Yeah, that's not going to fly. And all of this creates this really nasty trap, especially for small and medium-sized businesses. Almost half of them say cost is the biggest roadblock. They can't find the budget, and they often forget about all the ongoing costs for things like software licenses and updates. So you get this vicious cycle where the companies that need to innovate the most to survive are the ones who can afford it the least. Okay, so money is a huge piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole story. The next part of this paradox is all about people, the skills they have, and the culture they work in. This number right here tells you a lot. India's employability rate is down to just 42.6%. That points to a massive skills gap. And think about it from a company's perspective. Why would you invest a ton of money in these super advanced digital tools if you're worried your employees don't even have the basic digital skills to use them? It's kind of like buying a high-performance race car for someone who's never even driven a car before. And this chart really shows you where it hurts the most. Companies are crying out for people who can do data analysis and cybersecurity. But if their team doesn't already have some of those core skills, spending big on training platforms feels like a huge, risky bet. And it's not just about skills, it's about culture. You know how it is. Sometimes a new idea gets shut down just because that's not how we do things around here. And you've got to remember, sometimes existing trainers or managers might see this new tech and feel like their jobs are on the line. That can create some serious resistance from the inside. All right, that brings us to our third big problem area, the systems problem. This is about the bigger picture stuff, the infrastructure and the strategic roadblocks that just make this whole thing so tricky. So yeah, cost is number one, no surprise there. But look at what else is holding companies back. Almost 40% say it's just too hard to even compare all the different options out there, or they have big technical worries. And look, there's that resistance to change again. It's like a minefield of potential problems, which makes it way easier to just not spend the money. And then there's a problem that goes way beyond the office walls, the digital divide. I mean, if only 15 out of 100 households in India have internet, you can't just roll out a fancy online training program and call it a day. You have to think about providing devices or internet access, especially for employees in more rural areas. And all of that just adds more cost and complexity. And this, right here, is the ultimate catch-22. The source material highlights this perfectly. The crazy high competition in the market is the very thing that makes tech skills so necessary. But that same competitive pressure forces companies to think short term. They're so focused on surviving the next quarter that they can't make those big, long-term investments in things like learning.
Okay, so we've looked at the money problem, the people problem, and the systems problem. It's a lot, I know. But now let's talk about solutions. How do companies actually get out of this mess and start moving forward?
The advice here is actually really practical and smart. Don't try to boil the ocean. You start small. Pick a couple of departments and run a pilot project. See what works, get feedback from your actual employees, and this is the most important part, show that it has a real ROI. Once you have a successful pilot, you have the proof you need to get a bigger budget. And the good news is, there are ways to make that first step cheaper. You can use great open source platforms that are much more affordable. You can look into government tax breaks for training. You can try blended learning, which is just a mix of online and in-person stuff to keep costs down. At the end of the day, it's all about building a rock-solid case that links learning directly to how well the business does. And really, that's the big takeaway here. It's all about a shift in mindset. As this quote says so well, this stuff isn't just a training expense. It's not just another number on a spreadsheet. It's a strategic investment in the future of your company, in your ability to stay competitive and relevant. So, that leaves us with one final thought, one last question for you to think about. In a world that's moving this fast, the choice isn't really about spending versus saving money. The real choice is, are you investing in your future? Are you just getting left behind?